Israel and Hamas are agreeing to the first phase of a deal to end their two-year war. President Trump plans to travel to the Middle East to attend the signing ceremony of the peace deal. Egypt's foreign ministry spokesperson, Tamim Khallaf, joins me now to discuss the latest with the peace talks. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for joining us this afternoon. Are you confident that the first phase is going to hold, and what are some of the pitfalls as they get into even more discussions to try to finally end this?
Well, we're very hopeful that the initial phase is being implemented. In fact, we're having assurances that they are. And I think there are preliminary indications that we're seeing at the moment that both parties, Israel and Hamas, are fulfilling their obligations under the initial phase of the agreement. So we have a set of, we feel comforted at this stage that things are moving in the right direction, in a direction that is catering to the aspirations of millions of people, not just in the Middle East, but across the globe. But we need to put this war behind our backs and move on and try to usher a new phase of hope, and rather than on misery and on agony. And that's why the summit that is taking place here in Egypt on Monday is such a significant, a transformative moment in the history of the Middle East, where we're hopeful that this will usher in a new era of stability and security in the region, and something which could not have happened without the assertive and steadfast leadership of President Donald Trump.
You're looking also on your screen there of images of Hostages Square that's in Tel Aviv and Israel, as both sides in places in Gaza and Egypt have been celebrating this ceasefire. The sticking points beyond this, of course, is what becomes of Hamas. Does it have weapons? Is it still in political control? There was a Wall Street Journal report from today saying that there's some Hamas police now that have moved back into certain areas in Gaza. Do you think that Hamas will cease to be that type of entity in Gaza, and should it be?
No, so there has been an agreement, and Hamas understands that they don't have a place in the political governance of Gaza in a post-war era, and this has been very clear, and they have been on the record saying so. And in fact, we have in Egypt and back in March, when the Arab Summit took place here in Cairo, we had made clear our perspectives on the future governance of Gaza, that Gaza should be governed by a set of independent Palestinian technocrats that are not affiliated in any way or form with any factions, and that is to preserve the integrity and impartiality of the next phase of political governance in Gaza. And therefore, there is a full commitment that Hamas understands that they will not have a place in the political governance in the future of Gaza. And this is the collective global desire. So we are hopeful that things are moving in the right direction, and in a direction that hopefully will usher in a much more calm, tranquil, and secure Middle East.
On the other side of that, does Israel, in the long term, need to fully move out of Gaza? Does there need to be a buffer zone? Are these all these things that are going to be discussed as the negotiations begin in Cairo?
Absolutely. I mean, there's obviously going to be another stage of negotiations, that we're moving into sequential phases of negotiation. There's going to be a set of discussions on security arrangements, Israeli full withdrawal from Gaza, of course, the issue of rehabilitation, reconstruction, and early recovery of Gaza, which is of absolute importance. We need to, and of course, the issue of humanitarian assistance. In this initial phase, there will be an influx of humanitarian aid and medical supplies that will have to be provided to the people in Gaza. So you're absolutely right, Rich. There's a lot of issues to grapple with here. They're all interconnected, but of course, the issue of transitional governance and security and the security arrangements are obviously of paramount importance.
And very quickly, do you feel confident today, or are you still very wary about where this could be headed?
Well, I'm inclined always to look at the glass half full rather than the glass half empty. I can tell you here, as an Egyptian who is speaking from Cairo, that there is a spirit of positivity, of constructiveness. Their spirit is uplifted to see that we are now at the cusp of moving in a defining moment, a transformative moment in the Middle East. And again, I would like to reiterate that this could not have taken place without the steadfast and assertive leadership of President Donald Trump.
Ambassador Tamim Khallaf, thanks so much for joining us. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.